I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. Or do I? In terms of God, all theology accepts that God is the creator of the universe and of human beings in that he is omniscient, omnipotent, and eternal. Time through time, I hear atheists arguing to others saying, "There is no scientific proof that God exists." Well, here's the thing. If someone is all crazy about asking us where the scientific proof is, they must know that science can only prove things that are inside the natural realm. And since God by definition is something that is outside of the natural realm, science cannot prove nor disprove the existence of God. Therefore, we do not know exactly whether God truly exists or not. It is especially important that God is conceived of as a personal but somehow supernatural agent. So, if God is supernatural and can control Earth, then would anyone consider natural disasters, humans, plants, animals, stars, planets, black holes, pulsars, and galaxies as a work of God? I think that's a yes, since we cannot control natural disasters or any stellar system out there. We're extremely tiny comparing to any star in the sky. This means we have no power out there. Some theists claim that some particular phenomena in the natural world are evidence for the existence of God as a creator. In addition, there are also tons of medically documented cases of people speaking in otherworldly languages they do not know, or even having near-death experiences and acquiring information they cannot access. Now, that does not necessarily have to do with just God by himself, but even supernature in much more broader terms. Now, does anyone wonder why there are exorcisms still being performed today? That is because there are still reports of people being possessed by evil, intimidating, or the worldly beings. But does that have anything to do with God and the supernatural world? Yes, because it's meant to drive away the evil forces from a person's body. Those forces, of course, being supernatural, and God in one way helping the person become more supportive of him. As the God, he is not only used to explain mind and consciousness, but also the existence of the seemingly ordered universe, not only in theology but even by scientists. In summary, the book of Job represents the problem of eternal and unmerited sufferings that every man experiences. Firstly, in Job chapter 1 verse 8, the Bible explains that the status of Job's life before he was damned. The Bible explains all of Job's previous possessions being 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 oxen, 500 she-asses, as well as his own family. The Bible also clearly states that he was a man who feared the Lord and avoided evil. However, like many other people would do in real life, Satan would question Job's faith and put it to the test, where he lost his property and every one of his friends blamed him for the problems. Yet he never gave up his faith throughout the whole ordeal. This allegory can mean anything whenever it comes to people that will go out of your way to make you suffer. Evil is always there to interfere with the good things that happen in life, just to turn it around. It's even worse when nobody else is here to help you get away from evil. In this case, Job complains. They have destroyed my ways, they have lain in wait against me, and they have prevailed, and there was none to help. Unfortunately, helplessness is one of the major aspects of whenever it comes to people suffering. Secondly, in the book of Job, Job believed that justice could help him, and any sort of evil treated the poor unjustly. As stated in this verse, "Thy wickedness may hurt a man that is like thee, and thy justice may help the Son of Man." And when the test was finally over, God rewards him with double than what he had initially lost. And then afterwards lived and died in happiness. And the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning. And he had 14,000 sheep, and 6,000 camels, and 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she-asses. And he had 7 sons and 3 daughters. And he died an old man, and full of days. This can basically mean that better is coming. That even during the worst of times, God is still with us, watching and in us. In summary, scientism claims that only science alone can explain the truth about the world, such as life. Moreover, as to assuming that only rational knowledge is scientific and that everything else is irrational, nonsensical, or irrelevant, it is just an ideology, a belief, while science is just science. Neil deGrasse Tyson, as reported in an APA article, claims, "My concern is that the philosophers believe they're actually asking deep questions about nature. And to the scientists it is, what are you doing? Why are you concerning yourself with the meaning of meaning?" Neil deGrasse Tyson was mentioned in Pyysiäinen's article because it raises a question to criticize the concept of scientism. However, in my perspective, I think that the whole point of scientism is that it's self-refuting. One of the worst arguments that I've ever heard from scientism is that science is the best source of knowledge, justification. But there is just much more to the human life compared to what actual science states. To some it may look like pseudoscience, and scientism may be the same thing, as Pyysiäinen argues. But it is no different from the misuse of other words such as pseudoscience itself or skepticism in the modern sense of critical analysis of potentially unfounded claims. It's like saying that the movement of stars can affect someone's personality. Like, I seriously find the question annoying whenever people ask me, "What's your zodiac sign?" Because emotions and the movements of stars do not equate to each other. They are obviously two different topics, two different ideas. Therefore, it should be considered a pseudoscience, because there is no source of evidence to prove it. In fact, it is relatively easy to differentiate actual science to scientism and all other kinds of pseudoscience. Another example of scientism would be if you accept all basic assumptions as if they were to be proven facts. Like Pyysiäinen also stated, words like science and scientific are used uncritically as honorific terms of epistemic praise. In general and simple terms, I think that scientism and pseudoscience is more based on the person's opinions. Nobody is proving anything in that sense. On the other hand, actual science can prove the questions via experiments and conclusions, therefore determining what occurs and what cannot occur realistically. Lastly, if philosophy were to really be dead, like I heard Stephen Hawking said once during a lecture, then this kind of subject would be rendered useless in everything or simply not exist in any kind of college or university curriculum. For us to have free will means that we can do literally whatever, whenever, wherever, and however we feel like to whoever. Unfortunately for me, I'm going to have to disagree with the fact that many people say that we all have free will, because we technically do not. I already know that there are several nations out there that refuse to give out freedom to their people. No individual rights, no property, nor legal rights, no right to believe in anything or say anything that we want. And those governments out there are only there just to make the people suffer and subject to their orders. Besides, the corrupt elite are always cracking up whenever they hear the cries of their people. What is the perfect example that every one of us should know by now? North Korea, of course. What a shame indeed. Therefore, this can all prove otherwise, that we have no free will at all. For us to really have free will, there should be absolutely no government telling us what we can and what we cannot do. And absolutely no police force trying to physically abuse us and treat us like how the slaves were treated in Brazil. On top of all that, we will also only get free will if our parents and grandparents or romantic partners will not complain over what we can do and cannot do and try to silence us every time we try to man up and explain ourselves to them. We need to look very closely at the arguments that these scientists are putting forward to determine whether they really give us a good reason to abandon our belief in free will. Balaguer stated in this article, with free will also comes with determinism, where anything can happen as the root result from an already predetermined cause that we did not choose ourselves. To further validate this point, Balaguer gave out a random example where he said, suppose that you are in the ice cream parlor, waiting in line, trying to decide whether to order chocolate or vanilla ice cream. And suppose that when you get to the front line, you decide to order chocolate. Was this choice a product of your free will? Well, if determinism is true, then your choice was completely caused by prior events. In addition, this can mean that our brain had the uncontrollable nerve to order chocolate ice cream instead of vanilla ice cream. Therefore, if determinism is true, then there will be no such thing as human choices, and our entire life would have already been planned accordingly by God. Possibly even the universe too, as Balaguer also explained in his article. If determinism is true, then as soon as the Big Bang took place 13 billion years ago, the entire history of the universe was already settled. Every event that has ever occurred was already predetermined before it occurred. Now, coming back to the earlier arguments, since the government, law enforcement members, and or even our parents technically already determined how we're going to live our lives, then the concept of all of us having free will to do anything we want to do can be proven to just be false. I know a lot of people tend to see things differently. However, there is this one huge takeaway that I want others to remember. Perception is not reality. Even if video games like Superliminal tell me otherwise. Suppose someone throws a grenade 30 yards away, it explodes. But does the damage radius increase? No. Does the size of the grenade increase? Again, no. Next, about the NPCs in this world. There are no NPCs. There may be people that have similar ideas to one another. However, I still believe in the fact that everyone is different in all terms, including physical and mental traits, are all unique. I do not share exactly all the chromosomes that, like for example, Taylor Swift has, nor have the same exact ideologies that Andrew Tate has. The concept of the matrix that Andrew Tate brings up with is unfortunately loads of BS. He said, and I quote, "They want to control us. This is what people who are in charge ever wanted from the beginning. Control. They want people to comply, and you have to put systems in place to ensure people comply." And that's where he is wrong, because people like him think in the way like life is a video game, because it's not. Nobody is controlling us. It is just that a lot of people that say the very same thing cannot make positive decisions themselves. Yet they continue to complain about why they do not like their lives. How pathetic. Tate's matrix theory is just as similar as Plato's allegory of the cave, because they think that we are being controlled. But unfortunately, we sort of have free will. But not exactly. And although we do not have free will, we are not being controlled either. And with assuming we do have free will, which of course can either benefit or harm others at the end of the day. In this article written by Nigel Tubbs, Epistemology as Education, Know Thyself, he at first discusses the relations of epistemology and education, and how is epistemology related to education, along with how education can be considered epistemological. The author then elaborates and questions, how can the theory of knowledge be asked to know knowledge without presupposing that knowledge already knows what it is? For me, this is a very confusing question to answer. It's not like you get any sort of knowledge if you do not learn anything about it beforehand. Hence why we have education, so we can acquire knowledge and use it to our advantage in other real life situations, right? If epistemology is the study of knowledge, and if knowledge is the condition of the possibility of any education at all, then it would be safe to say that we would all be able to understand clearly what we were taught in the classroom. For example, I think that the reason as to why most classes tell us to show our work, it can be mostly because they want us to either verbally or visually display our knowledge to them so that they can be satisfied themselves. Furthermore, Tubbs states in this article, to do education is to work with knowledge and for knowledge. In that case, then this would mean if we simply showcase our work to our class, we can indeed more knowledge for ourselves, and indirectly giving our peers our knowledge too. However, I fear that our knowledge may only be temporary, as sometimes we may forget what we have learned in class, but if we are able to expose ourselves repeatedly over education, then we will be able to have knowledge again, or continue to keep it all in our minds for a little while longer. So what are semiotics? Semiotics are the study of sign processes and the communication of meaning. In this case, signs are defined as anything which can convey intentional or unintentional meaning or feeling to the interpreter. As stated in Semetsky's paper, the word semiotics derives from the ancient Greek words for sign and signal. Digging deeper as Semetsky continues to explain the word in many different ways, it would also be surprising to find that human beings are sign users, as semiotics can also serve as a meta-language, the function of which is to describe human action. So to summarize, let me give a couple examples. If the phone's ringing, then that will be considered an auditorial sign because phones make noise, right? The action for the human is to interact with the phone, either accept or decline the call. If someone is listening to instrumental music, this would also be a sign, as a human action would be to dance or cry. All this can also show that the concept of semiotics is not necessarily limited to words and conversation with other people, but also sound too. This can also prove true the following statement. Semiosis is a communicative, interactive, relational, and interpretive process. Communication, that is the flow of information and the mutual transformation of signs that are being translated into other signs, is an important concept in semiotics. What about visual semiotics? Would it still count as semiotics if all I am being shown are images and literal signs? Yes, of course. This could be exemplified in certain advertisements shown on billboards, along with the usual stop or no U-turn signs that we all have come across every time we drive. Or someone simply sends in a series of emoji text in their social media messages. This also finally proves my last point, in which Semetsky also stated in their paper. Mental images belong to a category of signs, and from a semiotic point of view, a mental image is an icon, a representation of the real world.